My daughter-in-law yelled at my daughter during her wedding, then told me to stay quiet. She screamed at my baby girl on her wedding day, and then had the nerve to look me in the eye and tell me to stay quiet. Well, honey, I am Betty Calloway and I have never stayed quiet a day in my life, and I am not about to start now. Hi, my name is Betty Calloway. I am 84 years old and I live in a little house right on the edge of Savannah, Georgia. I have lived in this same town for over 60 years now. I know every street, every neighbor, every bakery and every church bell that rings on Sunday morning. This is my home and I love it deeply. I spent most of my working life as a school librarian. For 38 years I helped children find books, find stories, find themselves. I retired 11 years ago, and now I spend my mornings on my porch with my coffee and my evenings calling my children. I have 2 children, my son Raymond and my daughter Clara. They are my whole heart. I raised them alone after their father passed when they were still young. It was not easy, but we made it through together. We are a close family. We talk every day. We show up for each other. That is something I made sure of from the very beginning. Now Raymond got married 6 years ago to a woman named Melissa. From the very first day I met Melissa I had a feeling in my stomach that I could not explain. She was polite on the surface, but there was something underneath that did not sit right with me. She smiled with her mouth but not her eyes. She always had a comment ready. Always a little dig hidden inside a compliment. But Raymond loved her and I respected that. I kept my feelings to myself. I welcomed her into our family with open arms. I brought her food. I remembered her birthday. I called her just to check in. I did everything a mother-in-law is supposed to do. I even defended her to people who told me they had a bad feeling about her. I believed that for a long time. Clara, on the other hand, is my youngest. She is 49 years old now and she is the most gentle soul I have ever known. She laughs easily and cries easily and loves deeply. She has been through a lot in her life. A difficult first marriage that ended badly. Years of healing. And then finally she met someone wonderful. A man named Thomas who treats her like she is the most precious thing in the world. When Clara told me they were getting engaged, I cried right there on the phone. Happy tears. The kind that come from deep in your chest when something finally goes right for someone you love. I remember sitting in my chair for a long time just smiling. My baby girl was going to be truly happy. That is all I ever wanted for her. Clara and Melissa had never been close. I always noticed that. There was a distance between them that never closed no matter how much Clara tried. She sent birthday messages. She asked how you were doing and waited for the answer. She did all of that with Melissa, and Melissa was always just barely polite in return. Never warm. Never generous. I used to tell myself some people are just not warm. But looking back, there was something deliberate about how Melissa kept Clara at a distance. The wedding was planned for this past spring. Clara chose a beautiful outdoor venue not far from Savannah. White flowers everywhere. Soft music. It was exactly what she had always dreamed of. She asked me to sit in the front row, and she asked Melissa to be part of the planning process as a gesture of goodwill. Clara always tries to include everyone. That is just who she is. She wanted the family to feel united on her big day. She wanted everyone to feel welcomed and celebrated. That is just Clara. She thinks of others even on her own special day. Now the trouble started about 3 weeks before the wedding. Melissa had some strong opinions about how things should go. She wanted to change the centerpieces. She did not like the menu. She made comments about the bridesmaid dresses and said the venue was too small. Every time Clara shared something she was excited about, Melissa had something critical to say. Clara listened politely but made clear it was her wedding and she had final say. That is when Melissa started to get cold. She stopped responding to messages. She gave short answers when called. She skipped the final dress fitting she had promised to attend. I noticed but said nothing. I just prayed that on the actual day everything would be fine. The morning of the wedding was beautiful. Warm and bright with a gentle breeze coming off the water. Clara looked absolutely stunning. Her dress was simple and elegant and her eyes were shining. I sat with her while she got ready and I held her hand and I told her how proud I was of her. She squeezed my hand and said, "Mama, I am so happy." And I believed her. Felt it too. That morning was one of the most beautiful moments of my life. I looked at my daughter sitting there in her wedding dress with her hair done and her eyes bright, and I thought about all the hard years she had been through. All the nights she called me crying. All the time she wondered if she would ever find real love. And here she was. Here we were. Felt like a miracle. The quiet, ordinary kind that sneaks up on you when you are not looking. The ceremony went perfectly. Thomas cried when he saw Clara walk down the aisle. I cried too. Everyone cried. It was exactly what a wedding should be. Full of love and hope and joy. After the ceremony we moved to the reception area, and that is when everything changed. We were about 45 minutes into the reception. People were eating and dancing and laughing. Clara was making her rounds greeting guests and thanking everyone for coming. She was glowing. Absolutely glowing. And then I saw her walk over toward the table where Melissa was sitting. I was not close enough to hear what was said, but I saw Clara lean down and say something to Melissa with a smile on her face. Whatever it was, it must have been perfectly innocent because that is just how Clara is. She was probably thanking her for coming. She was probably saying something kind. That is what Clara does. Even to people who have not been kind to her. What happened next I will never forget as long as I live. Melissa stood up from her chair. She stood up and she raised her voice loud enough for half the room to hear, and she said to Clara, "You always have to make everything about yourself, do you not? Even today you could not help yourself. You have been doing this your whole life and I am sick of it. I am absolutely sick of it." She said it loud and she said it sharp, and every single word was meant to cut. The room went quiet. The music kept playing softly in the background, but the conversation stopped. People were staring. Clara stood there frozen. The smile disappeared from her face. Her eyes filled with tears. Thomas started moving toward her from across the room. And I sat there for 1 second, just 1 second, feeling the shock move through my body like cold water. I could not believe what I had just witnessed. At a wedding. At my daughter's wedding. On the happiest day of her life. Then I stood up. I walked over to that table and I looked Melissa in the eye and I said, "That is enough. You do not speak to my daughter that way. Not today. Not ever. But especially not today." And do you know what Melissa did? She turned to me. She turned to me with that same cold smile she always has and she said, "Betty, stay out of this. This has nothing to do with you. Just stay quiet and sit down. Stay quiet." She told me to stay quiet. I have been on this earth for 84 years. I buried a husband. I raised 2 children alone. I worked for 38 years shaping young minds. I have earned every single word that comes out of my mouth, and no one, not one single person, is going to tell me to stay quiet when my daughter is standing in front of me with tears running down her face on her wedding day. I want you to understand something. When you have lived as long as I have and loved as hard as I have, staying quiet in a moment like that is simply not possible. It is not in me. It has never been in me. And I thank God for that. I did not yell. I want to be clear about that. I am not a yelling woman. But I spoke clearly and I spoke firmly and I made sure every word landed exactly where it was supposed to land. I said, "Melissa, I have watched you for 6 years. I have been patient and kind and welcoming, and I have given you every benefit of every doubt. I have defended you to people who told me you were not right for this family. I have made excuses for your coldness and your endless criticism for years. But what you just did to my daughter on the happiest day of her life is something I will not overlook and I will not forget. You owe her an apology. Right now. In front of these people." Melissa stared at me. I could see she was not expecting that. She was expecting me to shrink. She was expecting me to be the quiet old woman in the corner who smiles and says nothing and goes home and cries privately. But I have never been that woman, and I was not about to become her in that moment. Raymond appeared beside Melissa. He had heard everything. His face was red and I could see he was embarrassed and confused and torn. He said, "Mama, please, not here." And I turned to my son and I said, "Raymond, I love you with everything I have. But your wife just humiliated your sister on her wedding day, and then told your mother to stay quiet. I need you to decide right now whose side you are standing on. Because there is no middle ground in this moment. There is no both sides. There is only right and wrong, and you know which is which." That was a hard thing to say. I knew it was hard. It hurt me to say it. But sometimes love means asking the hard question out loud, even when your voice shakes a little. Even when you are 84 years old and your knees ache, and you would rather be sitting in your chair drinking sweet tea. Sometimes love means standing up anyway. Thomas had reached Clara by then. He had his arms around her and she was crying quietly into his shoulder. The guests were still watching. Some people were whispering. The music had stopped at some point without me noticing. A few of Clara's friends had moved closer as if they wanted to be near her. That touched me deeply. She had good people around her. That mattered. Raymond looked at Melissa. Then he looked at Clara. Then he looked at me. And something shifted in his face. I saw it happen. Like something clicked into place that had been loose for a long time. Like a man who had been half asleep finally opening his eyes all the way. He turned to Melissa and he said, "Melissa, you need to apologize to Clara right now." Melissa looked at him like he had spoken in a foreign language. She said, "Raymond, you cannot be serious." He said, "I am completely serious. What you did was wrong. Apologize." His voice was calm, but there was something underneath it that I recognized. It was the voice of a man who had made up his mind. Melissa picked up her purse. She smoothed her dress. She looked around at the guests with an expression like she was above all of this, like we were all beneath her notice. And then she looked at me with an expression I can only describe as pure fury. The kind of fury that comes from someone who has never been held accountable before, and does not know what to do with it. And then she walked out of the reception without another word. Raymond stood there for a moment. Then he walked over to Clara and Thomas and he hugged his sister and he said, "I am so sorry, Clara. I am so sorry." Clara held on to him and cried. Thomas shook Raymond's hand and nodded at him the way men do when words are not enough. And slowly the room began to breathe again. Someone started the music back up. People went back to their conversations. Someone brought Clara a glass of water and made her laugh somehow. The moment passed the way moments do, but the weight of it stayed in the room all evening. I could feel it. But something had changed. Something real and permanent had changed that afternoon. In the days after the wedding, I heard from Raymond every single day. He and Melissa had a very serious series of conversations. He told me things had not been right between them for a long time. That Melissa had been making small digs at Clara for years behind his back and to his face, and he had not wanted to see it clearly because he loved her, and because seeing it clearly would have required him to do something about it. He said watching her humiliate Clara in front of everyone, and then tell me to stay quiet was the moment he could no longer look away. He said, "Mama, I should have seen this long ago." And I told him, "Son, you see it now, and that is what matters." Melissa did eventually send Clara a message. Took about 2 weeks. It was not exactly an apology. It was more of an explanation of why she felt justified in what she did. It was full of reasons and justifications. Clara read it and then put her phone down and said, "Mama, some people are just not capable of real sorry, and I have made my peace with that." She said it so calmly, so clearly, without bitterness, without anger, just clarity. I was so proud of her in that moment I could barely speak. As for Raymond and Melissa, they are in couples counseling now. I do not know what the future holds for them. That is between them and God and whatever work they are both willing to do honestly and completely. What I do know is that my son finally sees clearly. He is paying attention now in a way he was not before. And that matters more than I can say. I pray for them both. I pray for their marriage. But I also pray that my son never again looks away from something that needs to be seen. Clara and Thomas came to visit me just last weekend. They brought yellow flowers because yellow is my favorite color and they know that. They sat with me on my porch and we drank sweet tea and watched the evening come in slow and golden over the rooftops of Savannah. Clara put her head on my shoulder like she used to do when she was a little girl and the world felt too big. And she said, "Mama, thank you for standing up for me." I said, "Baby, I will always stand up for you. From the day you were born until the day I leave this earth, that will never change." She squeezed my hand and we sat there quietly for a while just listening to the evening birds and the distant sound of the street, and I thought to myself, this is enough. This right here is more than enough. This is everything. I am 84 years old. I am slower than I used to be. My knees remind me every morning that I am not young anymore. My hands shake when I pour my coffee. But there are some things that age does not touch. The love a mother has for her child is one of those things. It does not get smaller with the years. It does not get quieter. It does not get tired. If anything, it gets bigger and fiercer and more certain with every single year that passes. It is the one thing in me that has never weakened. Not once. Not ever. So when someone tells me to stay quiet while my daughter is standing in front of me with tears on her face on the happiest day of her life, they have made a very serious miscalculation about who I am and what I am made of. I am Betty Calloway. I am 84 years old. I live in Savannah, Georgia, in the same little house I have loved for decades. I spent 38 years of my life helping people find their stories in the pages of books. And this one right here is mine. And I told it the only way I know how to tell it. Honestly. Completely. Without apology. Now I want to hear from you. Where are you watching from today? Tell me your city down in the comments below. And if you love your grandma, if she has ever stood up for you or held your hand through something hard or spoken up when no one else would, give this video a like and subscribe so you never miss my stories. And please share this with your friends and your family, because somebody out there needs to hear today that it is never too late to stand up for the people you love. No matter how old you are. No matter who tells you to sit down and stay quiet. Thank you so very much for being here with me today. God bless each and every one of you.